In your press release, your original press release, you noted that Dave brought the idea of purchasing Lubrizol to me on either January 14th or 15th. Initially, you said I was unimpressed. You went on to note that on January 24th, you sent another note to Dave indicating your, quote, skepticism about making an offer for the company. However, in a very short period of time after Dave's discussion with Lubrizol's CEO, you, quote, quickly warmed to the idea. Please clarify what caused you to, quote, warm to the idea so quickly. If this didn't strike you as being a great business at first glance, what changed, and what was David Sokol's role in convincing you?
It wasn't that it struck me as a business I didn't know anything about initially. You're talking about petroleum additives. I never would understand the chemistry of it, but that's not necessarily vital. What is important is that I understand the economic dynamics of the industry. Are there competitive moats? Is there ease of entry? All of that sort of thing. I did not have any understanding of that at all initially. As a matter of fact, I suggested to Dave, I said, Charlie's a lot smarter about oil than I am. Why don't you give him a call? Because I just don't know anything about that business. And I talked to Charlie a few days later, and I don't remember whether I asked him whether David called or anything, but I mentioned it to Charlie. Charlie says, I don't understand it either. So when I talked to Dave later, he had not gotten a hold of Charlie. I told him, forget it, he's as bad as I am. What Dave passed along to me after having that dinner with James Hambrecht, and which I later confirmed in a lunch when James Hambrecht came out here on February 8th. But it was the same thing. I thought and I still feel, I thought I got a good understanding of industry dynamics and how the business had developed over time, what the role of oil companies was and would be in relation to a chemicals additive. The oil companies are the biggest customers. They sell base oil to a Lubrizol, but they are the big customers, and they have gotten out of the business to quite a degree, although there's two of them left in it. So this industry had consolidated over time. I looked at the question of ease of entry. Every time I look at a business, when we bought See's Candy in 1972, I said to myself, if I had $100 million and I wanted to go in and take on See's Candy, could I do it? And I came to the conclusion, no, so we bought See's Candy. If the answer had been yes, we wouldn't have done it. I asked myself that same question, can I start a soft drink company and take on Coca-Cola if I have $100 billion? Richard Branson tried it some years ago in something called Virgin Cola. The brand is supposed to be a promise. I'm not sure that that's exactly the promise you want to get if you buy a soft drink, but in any event, I felt after my conversation with Dave, subject to a second conversation with James Hambrecht, but covering the same ground, that it's not impossible at all for people to enter this business, but in terms of the service and the relatively low cost of what Lubrizol brings to the party, and in terms of people trying to break into a market and take them on, and it's not a huge market, it's probably only a $10 billion market overall. I decided that there was a pretty good sized moat around this business. They got lots and lots of patents, but more than that, they have a connection with customers. They work with customers when new engines come along to develop the right kind of additive. And so I felt that I had an understanding, didn't understand one thing more about chemistry than when I started, but I felt that I had an understanding of the economics of the business the same way I felt that when the ISCAR people talked to me. I mean, who would think that you could take some tungsten out of the ground in China and put it in little carbide tools, and that you could have some durable competitive advantage. But I decided ISCAR had a durable competitive advantage after looking at it for a while. That's the conclusion. I have come to the conclusion that, and Charlie as well, that the Lubrizol position as the dominant, or the number one company, not dominant, but the number one company in terms of market share in that business is sustainable, and that it's a very good business over time. It helps, they are helping engines run longer, run smoother. When metal is acting on metal, that lubricants are important, and they're always going to be around. And I think Lubrizol will be the leading company for a very, very long time. And that's the conclusion I came to. And I did not have a fix on that, nor did Charlie, prior to Dave relaying on to me what he had learned at that dinner, which incidentally, Lubrizol had been telling the world. I mean, they made investor presentations and all that quite extensively over the years. I simply hadn't paid any real attention to it, and when it was explained to me, I thought I understood it, and I still think I understand it. I think Lubrizol will be a very, very good addition to Berkshire, and I saw James Hamburg just yesterday, and despite the turmoil around this, they are very enthused about becoming part of Berkshire, that they regard it as the ideal home. Charlie?
Yeah, ISCAR and Lubrizol to some extent are sisters under the skin. You got very small markets that aren't really too attractive to anybody with any sense to enter, and fanaticism in service. So if you have any more like that, why, please give Warren a call.